Can't wait for all three people. Oh, okay, you can go.
Hello, everybody, all three people, and welcome to the Survivor New York Exit Interview podcast. I'm Naomi. That doesn't matter. More importantly, we have with us, he's hacked on Facebook, but he's not gone from our hearts. It's Chris Lord. Chris, how are you?
Hey, you're important too, Naomi. We're all important.
It's
Don't
true.
ever look down on yourself. This is so exciting, honestly. I'm so happy to have Kristen here with us. I mean, you can introduce her officially, Naomi, because I love your introduction, but Kristen and I go way back, so it's so cool just to hang out with her.
Yeah,
so
cool.
10 times more powerful than Chris. We have Chris 10. Kristen, how are Christine, as some people know you? Kristen, how are you doing?
I've been called things not even resembling Kristen, like Caitlin. I've been called everything. I'm doing good. I got my alcohol ready. I got my brain ready. I got my mouth ready. I got everything ready.
Oh, it's gonna be a fun night. No, I'm super excited. And I think that Chris, this is the first time we've gotten to talk to any audience since the end of the finale. And I just want to say, Chris, that you did a fantastic job. Shocker. I took the lazy way out, and I didn't have anything to do with editing the finale this year, which was some amazing edits from Sharif and from McKenna, and you, Chris, you did a wonderful job. Kristen, did you enjoy watching the finale? Was it more fun than painful memories?
I was so much more fun watching because I think it's understated how stressed you are in these games, and it's also understated how quick these rounds were. And so I didn't really have time to emotionally process anything by the time I got to the finale. I was just go, go, go. So it was good to like take a step back and be like, you know what, you did okay. You did okay. So that was really cool. I had fun.
Yeah. Chris, do you have a favorite finale moment?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think I liked Ed's jury questioning to the group and just like his overall appreciation toward the game and still tying in the idea of Bannerman Island and thanking Bannerman Island that he gets to be a part of that jury. So I thought it was like a cute, special moment in my heart. But I actually, I may take that back and say Kristen's reactions to the final five vote, where Sharif
can't hide my emotion.
like that was so funny, and like even Danny's reaction was really funny too. So
I didn't realize my mouth opened that big. Like that's the number one thing I learned about watching this season. Like I thought it was just gonna be but no, it was like a horror movie when you stretch the mouth open. I was like, oh God.
Literally everyone was shocked.
Yeah,
I was very, very
like, you have the opposite of a poker face, is what I would say.
What about you, Naomi? What was your favorite part?
Okay, I loved that conversation between you, Kristen, and Annie, where Annie's like, you're like, you can't look me in my eyes, and Annie's like, no, I'm sorry, it's just my contacts. And because I would operate the same way, where I'm just like, Annie was like always a listener. You can see in the clips with her and Julia, she's always like listening but not looking her in the eye. But it was such a funny, like, I love when people kind of break down like the metagame of like the social interaction, like, oh, I see you're crossing your arms, that means you're not interested in what I have to say, and putting it right into somebody's face. I also love Brienne getting really pissed off. Was it at the final four where she just like keeps trying to talk and then everybody keeps talking over her?
The final five.
She was so quiet. I didn't hear her.
She's so pissed. It's so funny.
That was really funny.
Yeah, like, talking over women is not funny, but also the way that Brienne responds to it, and it's just like, do you see what I mean? And she's totally right. It's like, very, very funny, I found.
And like, we were watching that episode in a bar full of people, and like to see her, because she didn't remember it. And like when she was watching it, it was really funny just to see her reaction to herself. Good times.
I didn't hear her, but also when she said, I want to say something, I was kind of like, what do you have to say? You're not even in trouble. So it's kind of like a little like, I was pissed at both Sharif and Brienne at the time. Not like actually pissed, but like game pissed. And so I was just like, what do you got to say? And so I didn't really care at the time, but I cared now.
Finale is great. We're going to get more into that later. Yes. But I feel like we should roll way back.
Roll it
Because,
back.
like, you had a little bit of a different journey as to getting casted and like getting to this point of playing Survivor New York and getting to day zero. Can you talk about what you remember from that?
Yeah. Okay. So from the beginning, the application process. So I originally was on the fence on if I wanted to play anyway, and when the applications closed, I was like, you know what, I don't want to play anymore. And I think part of that was due to like fear from my past games. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not gonna like do good. I'm gonna like just like make my mental health even worse if I try this. But then I started watching season 4, and I fell in love with all the characters like Davey and Kyle and Kai and Emily and just everybody. And then I was like, I kind of changed my mind. And I was like, Naomi, is it too late? Like messaging back. And she's like, no, it's not too late. And then I talked to Chris too, because we know each other from Survivor British Columbia, which we played back in 2019. And so I had this like little last ditch effort to submit an application, and I guess they liked it. And so I got to play, and that's how I got on, I guess. Or that's how I remember it. I don't know how you guys remember it.
What we did in the secret shadowy casting room. Yeah.
In my basement.
Yeah.
Just a little room. No, that's correct. No, you're totally correct. But you have a great memory.
Yeah. I will also say, Kristen, that part of it was, I think you had I don't like to push people to apply because I feel like it makes them nervous, or the idea of like, especially I think, as like a woman, like people really want gender equality in games, which is totally valid, but also sometimes it will be like, so you're gonna play this, right? Like you're like, Jesus, like you're really like desired to play the game. And I knew that we wanted you from the moment you had expressed even an ounce of interest, but I was also like, if Kristen doesn't want to do it, if it's not the right time, it's not the right time. But when you were like, I think it's right, I was like, fuck yeah, okay, here we go.
I was so excited too. I have to say, I was probably the top 3 people I was most excited to see play the game for sure.
Other 2. I'm wondering.
I'm not gonna.
You don't
I'm
have
not
to
gonna
say.
say.
You don't gotta say. You don't gotta say.
You might be number 1, but I just have to say number 3. Top 3.
Number 2 is Stan.
Makes my heart warm.
You're just very personable, very smiley, and that's like what people gravitate. Well, that's what I gravitate toward. And when we played in British Columbia, we played a Survivor game together for like one day, and you were always just so like happy and cheerful, and that was like really like comforting sort of person to be around. And I figured, if I felt super comfortable with her, then a lot of these other players that are playing this game are also going to have that like feeling and that experience with you as well. And I hope that they did, and I think that they did.
Hope so. I hope so. I think my personality is one where, like, if you remember in Survivor British Columbia, not everybody liked me, or some people liked me, some people didn't, and so that was something that I was scared of. But it's really nice and gratifying to hear that you do think I'm like a warm person, and that you acknowledge it, and that you like it. And I have heard the same from other people, and I think in a way this game sort of boosted my confidence, and I didn't even know that I needed the confidence booster, because before the game we all know COVID was happening, but I was really low on myself because I had a streak of not bad games, but games where I wasn't proud of myself, and it affected my mental health more than I wanted it to. So that's like really nice to hear.
Well, it's this really interesting like rejection of self sometimes when people vote you out of games, or if you have a negative experience, you can feel like it's your spirit being like rejected. But at the same time, some people will drown themselves in games and say, okay, well, if I just have another one, if I have another good one, it'll be fine, or like whatever. The quantity over quality, where I think you took a lot of focus onto like, what do I want to do? How do I want to make this ensure it's a positive experience? And I also remember that I feel like we're very anxious about the game, and that's okay. I think it's totally reasonable to be, but you are braver than I am, because I have the same feeling of I don't want to do this anymore. I'm kind of over it. I don't need this for myself because it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't put me in a good mental place. And I really admire that you took the leap of faith that I think a lot of people are either too scared to, or they don't even take the time to consider that they need an actual like mental health break from live reality games. It's okay, guys. You can take a summer off. It's okay. Hear it from me.
Yes.
You can pass on a season.
Seriously.
Oh my gosh. But Kristen, one of the big things I wanted to ask you was, what did you think about in terms of playing the game again, were there things you wanted to do differently, lessons you had learned, things that you were bringing into the game?
Yeah, so I think just by my nature, I'm very analytical and very meticulous and stuff like that. And sometimes when I'm too meticulous or too thoughtful, I drown myself in my own thoughts. And that's usually what's gotten me into trouble in the past is I overthink something and I do like a little stutter step and then I end up like tripping and falling on my face. So I think in this game, I just wanted to like go, 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 go and just let my instincts take over because I think when I'm trying to have fun and when I rely more on my instincts, I think I'm like smart enough to pick up on like what I'm supposed to do. It's just when I'm like trapped in those thoughts that I end up like tripping myself up. But I also think I wanted to be a more aggressive social player than I had been in the past because I think I've heard a lot of people struggle with this when they first play a live game, but they don't know how hard to play because you see real Survivor when people play too hard, they get themselves into trouble. And in my first 2 games, I like thought I was playing hard, but I wasn't actually like playing as hard as I like thought I was perceiving myself to play. So in this one, I also just if I saw that I wanted to do something, I wanted to just go for it and not really think about it at all. And I think just relying more on my instincts is what I wanted to do in this game versus my other games.
I do want to bring up something really interesting because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a very impressive game record, I would say. I mean, you've played 3 very iconic live reality games. You know, Survivor British Columbia, you placed, I think, 4th.
Yeah, I got 4th.
The last person from your original tribe.
That's very true.
And then you played Reelfoot, which is one of the probably the biggest one out there, and you got 5th or 6th place.
I got 5th, yeah.
Yeah, and then you went to Survivor New York and you got 2nd place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any of the other games you've played. Those are the only 3
I did Sequester, but in terms of like Survivor games, like I don't count any of those offbeats as like a true social game. They're all experimental in my opinion. But in terms of like true raw Survivor, actual social dynamics mattering, actual strategic decisions carrying weight, and not just like, oh, you got a bad twist. Those are the only 3 games I've played.
You can only vote for everybody whose last name ends in Y. Yeah. No, I remember being a huge fan of you and your sister during Reelfoot. That was a season where it was like if like this better be for the girls. I remember watching that season. Like we need this one because it was such a Reelfoot is Reelfoot, but I love that season so much.
I got voted out for a girls alliance in Reelfoot because there's only 3 girls out of 10 on my tribe. And I'm like, you know what? We're gonna all work together. And then one of them threw me under the bus. But then the other girl backed me up and we're like, we're just going to throw the other girl under the bus. And then we threw her under the bus. And then the other girl went on to win. God. So it was a win in my book.
We love the winner. I do love the winner, but I would have loved you or your sister to win for sure.
No, I'm glad I voted her.
I'd love to see the queens in the chat.
Oh, there's McKenna. Let's get to the night 0 and then like the first round. So what were your initial thoughts on everybody and like your tribe and like how was like the overall camp life on night 0?
So fun fact about night 0, I think me plus Danny were the very first people to arrive on site, and I knew I wanted to arrive early on purpose because I wanted my face to be like kind of familiar with everybody, but also I kind of want to scope everybody out. And so I just remember, honestly, it's kind of a blur because I just remember talking to a bunch of people. But in terms of my initial tribe, I felt really, really, really good because I knew I had a very strong connection with at least 2 people. And on a tribe of 6, that makes 3. We just need 1 person in theory. Those 2 people were McKenna and Danny. And then everybody else on the tribe, even Ari, Robin, and Andy, I felt like pretty good about. Like most of the people who I didn't really talk to were on other tribes. So I was like, you know what? This is a good tribe right now. And I think a lot of us were on the same page night 0, but I think the one thing I could have done differently on night 0 is talk more to the other tribes. But I told myself, you know what? I can do that later. I also don't want to be the person who looks like they're talking to all the other tribes. So I did talk to other people, but probably not as much as I should have once we got our tribes. And I think the vibes were just like really, really strong, especially after we won that first reward, because it like told us, we're a good tribe. We're smart. We're strong. We got everything going on. Maybe we won't have to go to tribal, which obviously that was a wrong read, but I was feeling really, really good after night 0.
That first challenge, I think, really exemplified, because I think for a lot of it, first of all, Iona was completely fucked. They had no chance of winning that challenge. And Palabel, you guys were getting somewhere, but Esopus was in the lead, and then you guys just kind of swept and took it. And I think I remember walking away from that challenge thinking, I think that Palabel is the challenge winning tribe. That's what I really thought about you guys. Which I do think was true in a lot of ways. I would say there's a lot of challenge dominance, even if you only lost once. But when it came to the first time you guys lost, because I think that's a good place to jump to. Actually, let's jump a little bit before that to Andy and his idol clue.
Oh,
right. I'm skipping over a big.
That's very important.
Please don't miss that. That's one of my favorite moments of the season. For sure.
I'm curious, Kristen, from your perspective, how you felt about the choice Andy was presented and the choice he made. Because
I got
it has a huge impact on your game. Mm-hmm. But how did you think it went for him at the time?
So even before Survivor New York, I've always been like a very, very, very firm believer that if you have a choice between selfish and selfless, you should always pick selfless for like the social benefit that it can give you, because it's never going to hurt to make the selfless decision, in my opinion. And so when he made the decision to like take the clue, even though he came back to camp and was like, this is for the tribe or whatever, I thought to myself, we were going to have an idol at our camp anyway. He was probably going to keep this idol for himself. And so I just like immediately did not trust Andy after he made that choice. And I think that sort of dictated the fact that we never really got close. And then obviously when we were looking for the idol, I genuinely thought he had it. And before I found it, I was like, oh, he's totally got it. I didn't really care that he had it, because I was like, whoever finds it's probably going to keep a secret. But in my head, I was all sassy. I was like, oh, he's lying. And I was like checking logs. And I remember the clip, like right before I found it, I said, I think he found it and he's lying. And then I saw it. And then it was like this movie cinematic moment where it's like, you're going to be important for the season. And I was like, yes, I'm going to be relevant. It was like, that's literally the first thing I thought. And then funny little behind the scenes story. I think I probably said it in confessional, but I don't blame Chris for cutting this out. But I had medication that I brought onto the site, and I was so excited that I told my tribe, oh, I need to like run and go take my medicine. So I like ran, and I accidentally took my medicine twice because I was like so excited, and my head hurt for like 3 hours after that. But it was like such a like really cool like.
There was no footage of that. I don't remember that.
Okay. I was like, why wouldn't he include that? That's kind of iconic that I could have overdosed over an idol, but that would have been a first. But
I just love that when you find the idol, like you're like pretending to keep looking. You're like trying to pull a big tree trunk.
I was nervous.
Yeah.
Like it was so funny, and like McKenna's like maybe like 2 feet behind you,
looking in the opposite
direction.
But I am a super fan when I play these, and I'm like, people will be screaming at me if I tell people, so I'm just not going to tell anybody. So I just decided not to.
Yeah, I think that's the next thing to dissect. But what I do love also about that scene is that like everybody is looking everywhere, and Chris, for some reason, the clue, everybody is like way overthinking it. It was in the log, it was right there, like very easy to see. But they overthink it to death, and you guys looked for like 3 hours. And I love that you find it, and McKenna is like, she walks away. Like literally, she's with you for a second, and she's gone, and then you find it. It's incredible. Like the timing is so good. It's really funny.
I didn't realize how close I was to people seeing it, but I think there were definitely points like throughout the next few rounds where I'm like, maybe somebody saw it and they're not telling me. I always kind of like, because you have to consider every possibility in Survivor. I always like kind of kept a note, like, maybe people know, but I tried to not let it bother me because I didn't want to be like the freaked out, like wide-eyed, bug-eyed, like paranoid person of the tribe. So
I have to say it was like pretty iconic that like after you find the idol, you talk about the potential that someone's going to go through your bag and find it, which was great for the editing because like it set up the storyline. That was the preview for episode 2. But I know you hid your idol like on your body, but then you decided to put it in your bag. And I remember talking to McKenna in her podcast saying that you had put the idol like right on the outside where it was sort of noticeable, and McKenna just had to feel around for like a little bit. So why did you decide to put it in your bag and not like, or put it someplace like a little bit more, I guess, discreet?
I think I was rushing, honestly, when I put it in the bag because it was either right before a challenge and right before tribal. And the only reason I was gonna put it in my bag in the first place was because I don't like want it to fall out when I'm like, if it's a challenge where I'm sprinting and I gotta like dive for something. Like, I don't know if anybody watched Australian Survivor, but a certain someone's idol falls out of their pocket during a challenge one time, and I was like, that's my absolute worst nightmare. And so I think I just shoved it in there, and I was rushing. And even when I had it in my bag, most of the times I was kind of keeping an eye on my bag. But there was one time where I don't remember, it was either Davey or Jordan were like, hey, Kristen, you want to come film a confessional? And my bag's like way over there. And I overthought it. I was like, if I go and just like grab my bag and like hold it like I'm like hoarding it or something, that's probably going to look suspicious. Nobody's going to look in the 5 minutes that I'm filming this confessional. And I guess they did. So that was obviously a wrong read, and I should have been more careful with it, but there's so much going on.
Well, it's also a damned, we saw Brienne on the other side of things. Like, she changed her pants, and everyone was like, she changed her pants. Oh my God.
Like, I was so scared people were going to do that about me if I was like gatekeeping my bag. I was so scared.
Yeah,
I was like,
there's a little bit of paranoia on either side of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So the big sort of, I kind of want to talk about the idol as a whole right now, because it is, I think both it has like not a lot of influence on like the end game, but it also has a lot of influence on this early storyline. I don't know. Where do we? This idol is such a funny idol. I don't think was any idol used successfully whatsoever this season, Chris. Like, no. Not at all, right?
Well, I mean, Brienne did use it on Sharif, and it did negate votes toward him, but it didn't matter overall.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, Kristen, how do you feel about the idol in retrospect? I think there's a lot to dive into, but from finding it to this initial moment of like Andy and McKenna find it, then McKenna and Danny let you know, where do we even begin on this poor idol's little journey throughout Survivor New York?
Talk about I had like a very like visceral emotional reaction when I learned that everybody knew I had it, because like up to that point, obviously you're a little stressed because it's a game, but I wasn't too stressed. And I remember when they told me I had it, I feel like my face flushed like super, super red, and I started like breathing like really, really heavy. It felt like, this is very dramatic, but this is how intense I experienced emotion. It felt like the most shocking moment of my life. Like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, it wasn't just like, I'm a little upset. No, because in my head, I was fabricating all of these things. Like, maybe I can like use the idol to make a big move. Maybe I'll be the hero who saves my ally. And I wanted to have the idol for a hero moment, because I know someone like me, when I get to the end, I have to have like very big resume moves if people are going to take me seriously. And I'm like, this is the ticket to that. And then once I learned everybody knew about it, I was like, well, I got to think of something else now. And so I didn't have too much time to sulk in it. I kind of just had to like, okay, this is just it. We're just going to go with it and see what happens. And I sort of played a lot of my earlier game around the knowledge that people knew I had it, because I like sucked up to people a lot. I apologized a lot. I'm like, we're good, right? Like, I really worked really hard on those relationships, because I knew if they had common sense, they probably don't trust me 100%. But I don't know. It kind of worked.
How was it like watching it though? Like seeing it on like the footage of them, like, finding it, or like
I can't blame them. I can't blame them in that sense, but also I'm just going to say this. I would never search anybody's bag in Survivor, but it's only because I personally hold my personal belongings super sacred. So I would never like invade that for someone else. It's just a personal line, but I don't blame other people who do it. And I think when they search through my bag, I think at first I was like super, super upset, but also if I didn't have the information and if somebody was framing me for having the idol, like maybe I would resort to the same thing. That's why it's a social experiment, I guess. Like I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. Maybe I would do the same. But I was definitely upset, but it's whatever.
Another side of this, I think, is the way that Danny utilizes this to improve his relationship with Andy. And also, I think that it's funny you say that like you didn't have a lot of time to process it. I feel like Danny was very like all hands on deck for the situation, if that makes sense. Like he was sitting there sort of coaching you on what he thought you should say. And it was like it was like you were all gonna like go and fire Andy or something. Like you were like it's like three people just all having a discussion about what to say, and then like okay, like you go do it, and then being like, did it go well? Okay, like it was so very monitored, and I felt like you didn't have any freedom in those moments.
I know, and I want to say that like when I was like not the confrontation, but the time where I like walk up to Andy and I tell them I have it, that was like when I was doing it, that was the most cringiest thing I had ever done. But in my head, I'm like, okay, if I just do whatever Danny says for right now, he's gonna think that I'm not like this like wild person who's gonna go against him. So at that point, I was just trying to appease the people who I knew I had an in with, even if that meant doing something that I don't want to do. In hindsight, though, I wish I had just like provided a more sincere apology to Andy, but I didn't do that. And that's something that I definitely think I would do if I go back. But I had my reasons for doing what I did, but I definitely, at the time, I was like, this is so cringe, like in my head, but I didn't like show that out loud. I think I showed just more like general distress out loud about it all.
Yeah, I feel like that was like super cringy, especially because Danny is trying to convince you to basically reveal to Andy that you have the idol when Andy already knew, and he caught on that bullshit real quick.
I
And I felt like
know.
that like ruined. I feel like that tarnished whatever relationship you guys could have had completely. And I think like there
Yeah.
was always a little bit of trust between you two, but it was never. It was like unrepairable at that point.
No, I
But
was very aware
yeah,
of that, but I was like, if I don't do what Danny says right now, Andy's probably gonna be mad at me anyway, and now Danny's also gonna be mad at me, and then there's nothing McKenna can do, and then I'm just gonna be without allies. So
I think we're missing a little chat about somebody special, Ari Ferrari, your
Ari.
friends.
I like
He
Ari.
told me at the bar he would have voted for you to win.
Oh, Ari.
So what happened in the round? Because I felt like you had a lot of power in the decision making. What
Yeah.
like made you really like? You could tell by the editing he really wanted to work with the girls and Robin, and he was really going to push forward to voting out Andy. And you kind of at that point knew that Andy didn't really trust you. So what made you kind of stick with getting Ari out?
I think there's multiple things. I think the first thing was because I found the idol and I wasn't 100% sure if anybody knew. I just wanted to keep a really low profile and not go against the grain too much because I didn't want to give anybody a reason to want to like get me out because I wanted to save the idol for as long as I could. But also McKenna, who I considered to like very like slightly edge Danny as being my number one. I feel like McKenna really wanted Ari out. And I saw an avenue in the game where I could get far without Ari, even if I would have preferred to have Ari as an ally. And so I went with what McKenna and Danny wanted, knowing that I had a route outside of that. But also, and I definitely say this in a confessional, I don't know if it was like scrubbed or deleted or if I just sounded weird or something, but I think I also knew that Danny and Andy would be perceived as like threats together. And I never knew, or I thought it was like slightly possible that maybe those two being a perceived duo would provide some protection to me later on if people were to like say target Green or target like our alliance for whatever reason. So it was just like, it was more like is the risk of saving Ari worth potentially like rubbing some of my allies the wrong way, like McKenna? And my answer at the time was no. Do I think I could have saved Ari in hindsight? Yes. Do I think he would have been a better ally than some people? Yes. But that's what I thought in the moment, and that's what I went with.
Yeah, I also think Ari suffered from, I would say, a classic like first game
that too.
Personality trait, which I know I've suffered from, which is just like you're a whole lot when you're playing your first time, and you're also a big Survivor fan. You want to be there and have fun, and sometimes you got to scale it back a little bit, or you're just so excited that you might be a wild card down the line. You might be a Carolyn down the line,
Yeah.
So it just became a little, I don't think that was by any means a game ending decision, especially not that early. I'm curious, Kristen, about your relationship with Robin, because on the flip side of things, I think this is a vote where you, Danny, McKenna, your names never come up at all. It is really focused on Andy versus Ari, with Robin sort of as like the sneaky like side vote mention. How, and there's also some scenes that I know are in the episodes where you talk about how Robin, and we've talked about it with Robin, that Robin was playing very like, I'm not going to throw a name out there unless it is absolutely necessary. And that made you guys feel a little bit unsteady. But how did your relationship change over time? Because I think once you swap together and as you get to the merge, I think you have a different relationship than you do at the start of the game.
Yeah, so I saw Robin in some minis before the game. I never talked to Robin. I never interacted with them, but I did see them, and I really admired how vocal they were. And I'm like, this is someone I want to work with. And so when I met them in person and they were kind of shy about their opinions, I was like, oh, Robin's not working with me. And it kind of scared me. But in the back of my head, Robin's always someone who I wanted to work with if the opportunity presented. But if Robin never gave me anything, it's really not worth it. And I did try to like give Robin some stuff too, just to like build off of, and it never happened. But then over time, I think it's just because they're more introverted and they came out of their shell. But I think once they did start to open up, I finally got what I wanted in being like a Robin ally. And I think part of that was like because we had the time at like the swap or even during the merge, when I realized like I don't just want these bros to know about my ally. I want to get another ally. And so I told them about my idol, and they're actually probably the only person in live game history that I've willfully told that I've had an idol, because I've found idols in other games and I always keep it a secret. They're actually the first person I've told that I've had an idol. And I think it's because I knew that they had the capacity to want to do something big when the time came down to it. And I'm really glad that we got closer later on. But obviously, I wish things developed a little differently. But I can say that about almost every round at the merge. So we'll get into that in a little bit.
Just wanting to get toward the swap now. When you got to the swap tribe, you got put on like a really great tribe. There was a lot of downtime. Very little information's known about your swap tribe. Can you tell me about the dynamics over there, what your thoughts were on the players, and if you guys had gone to tribal council, do you think that there was a name that was out there?
So when I saw the tribe, I think my first reaction is double-edged sword, because I knew being in a majority of 4 green was probably going to bode well. And even if green were to target each other, I didn't see, well, maybe Andy would have targeted me, but I didn't see anybody like picking me over each other. So I felt very safe in that. But also I knew everybody else is probably going to be scared of how united we are, just because we got to like spend the whole day together, even if we didn't really get to vote. And so I wanted to use the opportunity to forge relationships with the other 3 people. And so I did talk to Jeremy a lot, because Jeremy, I could see like the eagerness and how much he really wanted to play the game. And I'm kind of an emotional person. And so I really like that about him, even if he played a little messy. And so I did try to forge a relationship with Jeremy, but also I tried to bond with Brienne, because I knew what happened with her idol and how they dug through her bag. And I'm like, we have more in common than you know, Brienne. But also I kind of had my eye on her, because I could tell she was a little sly dog. And then Stan, I think I just knew Stan wasn't good with everybody, so I never like had a bad thought. But in terms of who I think would have been voted out, I think everybody would have gone for Jeremy. I don't think I personally would have wanted to do that. So it would have been interesting to see okay, if the heat's placed on Kristen right now, you gotta choose Jeremy or you gotta choose Green. I don't know what choice I would have made. I don't know what I would have done. I don't think I would have wanted Jeremy out, and it's very similar to what happens in the merge where I didn't want him out. But I think because Brienne was like very buddy up to everybody and Stan was a big boy, I just think that it was always probably gonna be Jeremy, but you never know.
Well, something also interesting with Jeremy is he maybe played a little messy, but he was loyal. Like he did not abandon his girlies. He stuck by the Iona women. And I always found that your relationship was very genuine with him. Especially considering I think that he was someone that was pretty obviously on the outs of the swap tribe. And the swap tribe kind of brings me to this question, Kristen, of like, I feel like this is when Stan, Andy, and Danny start to connect. And as we know, because Chris has probably had to edit a million scenes with this all the time, the Big Boys Alliance starts to become a random fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with Danny and Stan getting to link up together on this swap tribe. And I'm curious from your perspective, Kristen, did you see that happening? Because I think in a lot of ways, Danny is, in retrospect, your number one ally through the game, just because he's like with you the longest. But did you feel that you could see that relationship forming and that you wanted to do something about it? Or was it more just like, all right, I guess Stan's joining our circle of trust? How did you feel?
So I don't know if this was ever filmed because there wasn't a lot of cameras at our swap tribe, and Jeremy and I kind of like reenacted him telling me the big boys, but he actually told me about that during the swap.
Yeah.
I don't remember when. So I knew it was like a thing because of Jeremy. I didn't know it through my own observations because everybody was talking to everybody, and it just didn't seem fair to me to be like, okay, men are talking right now. There's an alliance right now. I don't think that's a fair assumption to make. But when I heard that that was a thing, I thought that it would like hold a little weight. I didn't think it would hold as much weight as it did. But it's only because in my brain, it doesn't make sense to just align with people because they look similar to you or they have similar muscle mass. Like, that's not a logical decision I would make. And I think my mistake was assuming that other people don't operate that way either, but they do operate that way. And I think I start to kind of realize it during the merge, but during the swap, I was like, this isn't going to actually like carry too much weight. But the only thing that peeved me about that was that because like Jeremy also told me, oh, they want to work together because they're going to be the comp threats. And in my head, I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, we've had like McKenna beast out some comps, like I've beasted out some comps. A lot of the girls have done like really good on like these comps too. So it just seemed like the alliance centering around them being threats was baseless, because in my mind, it's not what you look like that makes you a threat, and it's not like being a challenge threat without doing many challenges, because there had only been a few tribe challenges, no individual at that point. That's not what makes you a threat. It's like the impact you make, like the social moves you make. And so I just didn't think it would be as big as it was.
I just want to point out, by the way, that out of all of the immunity challenges, the individual immunity challenges, the final three each won two individual immunity challenges. The only other people who won them were Sharif and Andy. But in a way, they're protecting each other, but then they're also winning. Like it was.
But I'm
it was
winning
very,
too.
Well, you're winning too, but that's what I'm saying is that like they were like, oh, okay, these people are threats, so let's keep them in so that they can beat me in immunity challenges. Like at a certain point, like Sharif's not available to vote for. Like it's so funny. This alliance where it just kind of forms out of nowhere, and becomes like a prevailing sentiment throughout the season, even though I don't think it was really ever something that was discussed until it was discussed by, like, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy is what I felt, is that once they started talking about, oh, well, guys our size get voted out, then it became the sort of non-geyser size group of people were like, well, do we do something about this? What are we gonna do? It just became its own sort of creation. Like the monsters kept growing. More people talking.
Naomi, you inspired me because now I want to go back and like look at placement like of every single challenge and see where Kristen falls in. Like, because I bet you Kristen.
I was last in a few, but
I don't know. Well, some of them are
maybe
tricky because it's like, you know, you have the wobbly stack and stuff like that. But on the other hand, I think that I I liked when you came in, Kristen, and totally beasted the cube puzzle. That was a highlight. I also really enjoyed. It's not in the edit, but it's not in the edit because I cut it out. But I got really annoyed during the easel challenge because Danny got in the way, and I was like, I'm trying to film that shit, Danny, get out of here. But I think that like you and Stan, you guys had a really good system.
Which challenge? Sorry,
that was the easel with the memory board.
Easel. Oh, okay, yeah.
And you I didn't know what that was. A lot of puzzles.
No, I didn't realize. I mean, I knew I was like good at puzzles, but I was like, I never call myself the best at puzzles because I'm used to playing some orgs, and everybody there is like, they're tweaked out. They're really good at puzzles. They're like crazy good. And I never stacked up to like the org people, but I guess I stack up to the reality people. So it felt really good to prove myself.
Now, I want to talk about one thing, which I think is the one thing that I would say, Kristen, I wish you did this.
I know.
But first we're going to say hi, Kyle. Fan favorite of the season, says Kyle. Kyle.
Thank you.
Our beloved Kyle. Kristen, I wish you would have given McKenna your idol.
No, listen. Okay. So
I know. There's a lot about it, and it's not.
This seems juicy.
If we're talking about, you know, my Brant steal and I can control everything, you would have given her your idol. So
I want to talk about that conversation because we were all everybody besides Robin. I don't remember if Andy was in this conversation. Maybe he was. We were talking about like all like the different possibilities of the swap, and I was like, okay, so if it's 4-1, I'm like passing my idol, right? And everyone's like, no, you're not smooth enough. You're not going to be able to like give it to me without looking suspicious. And in my head, I was like, I can come up with something creative. And I said that, and they're like, no, it's fine. And I was like, well, McKenna, do you want it? She's like, no, I won't want it if that's me. And I was like, okay. And I just like left it at there. And I felt if I had like independently like tried to give her the idol at the swap without giving her warning, she would have like gotten like weird movements and it would have like made us look even more suspicious. But I definitely might have thought of something like even like because I had my own water bottle that wasn't clear like the ones you guys provided us. I was like, oh, what if I just like put the idol in the water bottle? I'm like, oh, here, McKenna, you forgot your water bottle. Like that's not gonna look suspicious. Like maybe something like that could have worked. And I kind of wish I had thought of that in the moment. I thought of that like 2 days after the game, and I was like, that would have been so good.
Which idol did you have? Did you have
green one? It was
the green man. Okay.
Yeah. That might have fit because it was like a bigger water bottle, but
no, that one would have fit. The other ones wouldn't, but that one would have.
No, they definitely wouldn't have.
It's
funny.
That and I was just texting with McKenna recently, the legend. Let's find.
I love McKenna, by the way, because I know she'll want me to say this. She was my number one. I'll say it on the.
She
camera.
was.
I believe that.
100%. Yeah. But that's what I liked about what I appreciated about your alliance is I thought that it was two very smart people who love Survivor, recognizing that you both were very smart people and also having a great bond where you could bounce ideas off of each other. I don't think we saw a lot of relationships where people were bouncing ideas off of each other successfully. I think the only other one that I can think of, frankly, is I would say there's two. There's the iconic Veronica and Jeremy.
Yeah.
Veronica exit interview coming soon. We're working on it, babes. And I would say maybe Stan and Sharif to an extent. I thought that they had a good back and forth. But you guys really, I thought game recognized game immediately and made it happen.
Yeah, I was really sad to see that like partnership end. I really wish that you guys have gone further together. I think like swap McKenna with any of the other three greens that were on the swap tribe with you, it would have changed the game so much, and it's crazy to even think about it.
She cheated in the bag too. I heard her interview. She like thought she was picking the one that everybody else
Yes.
picked, and she didn't.
Oh god, that's horrible.
That's almost like karma's like, don't cheat ever again, McKenna. Don't you do it.
McKenna
For real.
she said, if she gave it to me after we lost the cube challenge, I would have taken it. It didn't cross my mind to ask for it. Like top 10 devastating survivor moments, you know what I mean?
You know,
Just tragic.
this is like inspiring me because you know, like on Australian Survivor, where they have all these like moments after challenges to like talk to their tribes. Like, I think we should encourage that. So, like, if people want to slip idols, there's like these moments to allow them to slip idols because I think that makes the game a lot more interesting.
Yeah. I think if you're on Survivor New York, take advantage of it. Go ahead. We're not going to tell you
Yeah.
to not talk to each other.
I didn't know she was in danger, but only because a blue had left. So I'm like, oh, maybe it's purple and green taking out blue. And so that was just another thing that never crossed. If I had known she was in danger, I might have thought of something. I was naive and I was like, oh, they're going to pick off another blue. And then when they didn't, I was like, like the evil growl, like looking over at them. But
yeah.
So
That's a tricky situation because, you know, once that person survives one vote, you think, oh, okay, never mind. We're doing good.
Yeah.
Kristen, let's jump into the merge now. We made it to the merge. It's still the middle of the night. It's getting, I think it's probably around like 9
This is
o'clock
the worst
at night.
round for my emotional well-being.
I mean, it was kind of like iconic because I felt like you had a lot of power in like this merge tribe. You have a lot of people that really trust in you, but then the vote ends up flipping from like Annie over to Jeremy, who's somebody that you really like and have bonded with, and you know tell everybody like you don't feel comfortable making this vote. But then at tribal council, Jeremy kind of throws you under the bus in order to try and save him, and that's something that I remember in like David versus Goliath, that like I think Angelina got like thrown under the bus for trying to save that one girl. Can't remember her name. But like how did that feel to get like a friend like sort of throw you under the bus? And then like can you talk about that merge scramble?
So I think it's like obviously I was very emotional and that's part of why I wanted to keep Jeremy, but also I think intuitively and deep down in my gut, I could tell that because the vote like switched to Jeremy last minute, that something's up. There are people who are pulling the strings here who aren't going to pull them in my direction. They're not going to pull them to benefit me. And I think part of why I knew that was because I was like informed of it very last minute. I don't know how last minute it was, but it felt very last minute to me. And I think because of the lack of time, I couldn't properly verbally express to Green why taking out Jeremy was not only like an emotionally bad move for me, but it was also a strategically bad move for everybody because I think there were a lot of people on our merge tribe who most of Green didn't have any connection to. We had no reason to keep them, whereas everybody had a little bit of a little bit of something with Jeremy, and maybe we could build off of that because if Jeremy goes here, that means someone's in charge and it's not us. And I wish I could have verbalized that in the moment. And I remember thinking, oh, there's nothing I can do. I can't flip because I have this idol, and if I flip on Danny, then I'm going to have an angry Andy who doesn't like me, who's going to like throw all this information under the bus and things are going to go crazy and I'm not going to have an ally. But then like last minute, I don't remember if it was right before or right after the confessional, I thought, you know what? I'm going to give Jeremy a chance. I know I said I wasn't going to like do anything, but maybe I can slip him a little information that if he's smart enough, he can stay. Like, and so I told him, I'm like, look, you're the vote. If you can like get Julia to play her idol, get her to do something, if you can scramble something up, like I will help you. I will work with you. This is my olive branch to you. Like last minute, I kind of decided, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to try to do something. And so when he called me out at tribal council, it just felt like item number 3 out of a million on the list where I tried to like do the right thing. And then it just all like came like crumbling in my face. And it was a very like disheartening moment because at first I was like, why'd you do that? And hearing his podcast, it makes sense, but also I don't know if that contributed to Purple never really trusting me again after that. I don't know.
So,
hello?
I don't know if you can hear that
turn off?
through my computer. My little brother just tried to FaceTime me. Sorry, everyone. Okay, back to Jeremy for this whole thing, Kristen, because I thought that you telling Jeremy was a good move because the idol does exist. Did you know that that Julia had the idol? Had you learned that from Jeremy?
I also learned that during the swap, probably. I don't remember what conversation this was, and I definitely know for a fact it wasn't filmed because there was nobody there, and I was thinking to myself, oh my god, this is like such juicy footage. But he told me that Julia had the idol during the swap, and so I think that information really like helped me to feel comfortable in my alliance with Jeremy. And once Jeremy left, I was like, you know what? I have this information. That was the only thing I had left from him, and so I wanted to try to do something about it. But I did learn about it during the swap.
Well, I think that you mentioned something, which is I'm not going to say it as good as you said it, but voting out Annie and voting out the opposing tribe, let's say, I think is beneficial for everybody except for Sharif and Stan. And it's this weird moment where like Sharif gets to link back up with Brienne, Stan gets to be Stan, and they both look at everybody who is beneficial for their game, and Jeremy is not one of those people.
Yeah. I think it was the first puzzle piece that led me to, Sharif's a threat, but I hadn't quite put it together until a few rounds later.
Exactly. And I think that that's a sign of things to come. This vote in particular is a sign of things to come because you try to do something, everybody talks over you, and then something else happens that you have to go along with. And then in the end, that person blames you. You try and then it goes
the story of my life. And the thing is, like, I didn't think it was gonna get worse after that. I didn't think I was gonna get like slammed under a bus every round. And so when it kept happening, I think at one point and eventually I was like, this is kind of funny. This is funny how horrible everything is going for me. But I think at first it was like, oh, that hurt. And then another one, oh, that hurt. And then eventually it just stopped hurting because I was numb. It was weird.
That's so interesting that you say that because I really feel like you kept getting pushed to the bottom, but never being like the last person. Like always like the bottom 3 or 4. Hi, Stan. But you overcome it time and time again, like a true classic underdog, and you won immunity at 2 like very crucial points, I feel like, because after Jeremy leaves, obviously you're not feeling that great. And I remember you telling me that the confessional you filmed, I think Michael had filmed it, you were very, very angry. And I could see it in that confessional, like your tone change. You were just upset about, like your voice not being heard. And that's something that you talk about a lot throughout the season is your voice not being heard. But then you come in and win this very clutch immunity, very fun challenge, I have to say. And I think it was like probably the hardest challenge, I think, of this season. So talk about like winning the 2 challenges that you won. Like, how did that feel?
So for the one, like with the poll thing, I feel like when I'm emotional, it's like kind of backwards, but when I'm emotional, I'm at my best in the sense that I know how to like really channel either anger or sadness, and I know how to like sort of morph it into something that benefits me. And so I was like telling myself, none of these people want you to win. None of all these people want you to lose. They think you're a loser. And it sounds like really dark and morbid, but that's what I was telling myself when I was holding those bars up. But also, I don't think I got that tired. Like my arms actually didn't get that tired. I think in terms of like the arm part, I think I could have lasted a lot longer. And so when I did win, I was like, not only did I win, but I made it look easy. So it really was like a confidence booster for me. And then when I won a second one, I think it for me, it reaffirmed like all these people are like calling me stupid, saying that all these guys are going to beat me in every challenge and that I have no chance. And I'm just like proving them wrong right here. And it was just like a really gratifying feeling. But it was also a gratifying feeling for myself because in my previous live games, I didn't work out. I hadn't practiced a lot of puzzles, so I wasn't really good at the challenge aspect. And so it was really cool to learn that like all of my hard work, all of my practice, all of my grit was worth it, because I think anytime you learn that like something you worked hard on is worth it, it's just the best feeling in the world. And so I think it was good because it helped me to like be more confident in myself, but also those rounds where I was confident sort of helped me to gain any sort of bearings I had, even though they got knocked out right away. Like it helped me to gain my bearings, gain my composure, and sort of slow my mind down for a little bit, which was really cool.
Yeah, you were getting jacked for Survivor New York. I remember we were hanging out at Live to Give, and that was something you were working on.
I'm more jacked now. I'm like 10 pounds heavier, but it's all muscle, I think. I hope it's all muscle. But...
Are you preparing for All-Stars?
I'm not answering that question so people can try to be sneaky and pre-game and be like, oh, I loved your podcast. You're so amazing. But I know they're actually pre-gaming, so I'm not going to say anything.
The metagame begins now.
No, I think it sounds bad, but I get suspicious over even that kind of stuff. I'm like, why are you messaging me right now?
So
I'm kidding.
The next vote, Chris and I think that was like that's like the big vote in the game for you, because that was like I think the first time you had ever been truly blindsided, and like that's part of the Survivor experience, is either being a part of a blindside or being blindsided yourself. So can you talk about just like the moments leading up to it? You told me, I think privately, that like you did not know it was going to be Annie, like, or Andy leaving, and maybe you would have been like also able to participate in that. So just kind of discuss the Andy vote.
So what's funny about that is, so before that vote, my plan was to pick off one of the purple girls so that they didn't have as many numbers. And then after that round, flip it on somebody like Andy. So it was something I was kind of already thinking about already. And if I'm being honest, I think this round is the biggest blur in my memory because of like the fact that I was hit by a semi truck at the tribal by being blindsided. And so the only thing I really remember is being like, oh, I'm voting one of either Julia or Veronica out, and then next round it's go time. And then when the move was made, then I think I was a little upset only because I thought I had like dropped enough hints to people that I'm not as solid with green as you think. I just can't do it yet. I thought I had dropped enough hints, but it turns out I didn't. And so after that, I think I still had faith that I could do damage control. I didn't think what was going to happen after the round Andy left was going to happen. And I think what happened the next round like really ruined everything for me. But I think in my mind, the Andy vote was like straightforward, like as I was perceiving it in real time, and then it just wasn't. And then I was sad. I was sad that I didn't have the chance to do it too. No offense to Andy, but I think if I'd been part of that, maybe I could have had more routes to the end than I did.
I have to say also, like, you did really great damage control after that, because I feel like people were not just like coming after you directly after that vote. But then, you know, after you're doing your damage control, Danny decides to tell Sharif that you have the idol. So in the midst of you like doing your damage control and like sort of like reaffirming that you're a good player to work with, now everybody knows you have this idol. And I think that's one of the most iconic moments of the season, is him telling you and like your reaction to that.
Oh my god, it's so funny. It's literally just like the, are you fucking kidding me? It's so good, but you're trying to repress your rage so much.
I didn't look as angry as I was in the moment. I was like watching it back and I'm like, that's it. Like I kind of look like not that as mad as I felt, but like I promise I felt more mad. And what's funny about that moment is I remember like right before I walked up to that conversation, with Danny, I like felt pretty good. I was like on the fence about what I wanted to do, but I was actually walking over to him to like discuss doing something big. But I like had this like little cloud over my head that was like something bad's about to happen, like this little thought in my head. And I like walk up to him and it's like slow motion in a movie. And he starts talking and he sounds funny. And I can pick up when someone's like, even if I can't pick up why they sound funny, I can pick up like when someone is like a little flustered. And so I asked him, like, did you tell people? And then when he's like, well, and I was like, no. And I started like in my head, I wanted to vote him out right away, but also in my head, I perceived, okay, my bridge with Danny is a wobbly bridge. I don't have any other bridges. I would rather walk on the wobbly bridge than no bridge. So I'm just gonna it's okay. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to tell him it's okay. We're even. But in my head, I thought some pretty, I don't want to say dark things, but I thought I was really, really, really angry at the time. But it was only because I feel like even if he thought telling people the idol was the best move, why not consult me about it first? Like maybe it was the best move. Maybe it was the ultimate move to earn trust with Blue. But it's the fact that he completely disregarded my opinion in that moment that really heated me in the moment.
Yeah, and this is where I'm gonna drop the hot take of this season in retrospect. Now that we've seen it all, and he's a wonderful man. Danny is a terrible ally to you, Chris, in this whole game.
No, I know, but like no, but it's like, do I want a terrible ally or do I want no ally?
No,
what am I gonna pick here?
And that's the thing is like because there's also this moment you have this opportunity to maybe take Robin and go to Veronica and these conversations are brewing, go to Brienne and say like, hey, look, it seems like the guys are getting along really well. Let's start working together. Veronica is really in on it. She talks about it a lot as we see throughout the season. And you have your idol as agency to say, look, Julia, I know that you have an idol. I have an idol. Let's do something here. But instead your agency is really taken away. And then it's made you to seem that you're very schemy or that you are somebody who is like lying to people because you've protected your valuable piece of information for a while. And then on top of all of that, it's all taken away. The information is given to Sharif, who I would say is in control of the opposition or in control of moves that you cannot be in control of. And and like if you go to people after this is revealed, you just look like a bitter person who's immediately turning on an ally. So then you don't want to look like that kind of person. You don't want to reveal that you're pissed or whatever. So then you're stuck with him.
That's why I didn't do anything, because I thought to myself, okay, I could pull all these people together, be like, let's make a big move. But okay, let's say the roles were reversed. Let's say I'm hearing about this girl's idol because some dude leaked it and she didn't tell me and we haven't really worked together, and then she approached me with a big move. I would say no to that. I'd be like, no, we're going to get you out anyway, and then my alliance is going to make the move. We don't need this number. And so I felt like to that alliance, like the opposition alliance, like the girls alliance, I could have been a number, but I felt like I would have been disposable if I worked with them. And whereas I felt like with Danny, even if he was like leaking all of this information, I just knew he wasn't going to vote me out, at least early on. And so I'd rather like just like work with people who I know aren't going to turn on me and then try to figure out something later than to make a hasty move, flip, and then have everybody turn on me directly after. Because I had actually been in a very, very, very similar situation in a previous game where I was sort of in the shadow of like the big guy, the big threat. And what did I do? I intentionally like got him voted out. And then when it came to the end game, like the girls alliance all turned to me and they're like, sorry, like, thank you for your help, but we don't need you anymore. And they cut me. And so I think part of me remembered that experience and was like, I'm going to do something different this time. And even if this isn't like the outcome the viewers want me to do, I'm not here to impress any viewers. I'm here to like get to the end. And so that's what I did.
I think that's a good thing to like preach for sure, that this is your game. This is like what you want out of the experience. But I feel like you went through like a double homicide situation with Andy leaving, the idol being revealed, and
But
then
also the
now.
Jeremy under the bus moment
Oh
too.
yeah,
Like,
okay. Oh yeah, it was
And
like
triple.
wait,
it
idol
was
being found in my bag, and then Jeremy calling me out, and then Andy leaving. That was the fourth time, actually. Like the fourth.
The 4 horsemen of the Survivor
And
apocalypse.
it's not even the last time. It's not even the last time, as we come to figure out that something just goes completely wrong.
Am I
Hello?
frozen?
Oh, you're good now.
Okay.
Hello?
I was gonna say, like, you're like, you mentioned in the one of your confessionals, like, this totem pole about, like, you want to be on the top of the totem pole. I feel like your entire game was about, like, you constantly going up and down on the totem pole, and like the idol being found, it brought you down a little bit. Jeremy, you know, kind of like turns on you, but then you win immunity, you lose Andy, you lose the knowledge of the idol being more of a secret, but now you lose Robin. So now, like, I feel like this is at your lowest point possible in the game, and like at that point, you really could only look up, and you do win immunity right after that, which is like a really great high. But you also lose your idol with Robin leaving, and you were surprised to see Robin leaving, and I would say that was probably the most iconic tribal council of the season, with Julia standing there for 40 hours. What can you tell us about that tribal council?
So, like the entire tribal council, I know there was a scramble that wasn't aired. I really don't remember. Like, I heard about it. I don't remember what happened. I think I was blacked out because I was so scared. But at that tribal council, I think I had heard all three. I've heard Danny, I've heard me, I've heard Robin, but it kept cycling and I wasn't hearing one name more than the other. So I was like, well, it's just like Russian roulette at this point. And I think at that tribal, I was like, okay, if someone's really serious about making a move, they're going to like reinforce like what the fuck is actually going on and maybe we can do something, because I knew like I had no real information. I had nothing. And I knew if I didn't get any information that I had any sort of confidence in, I was going to play it on myself no matter what, just because I think once you like get rid of the idol, people are less scared of you. People are more willing to work with you. And I think at that point, the only way to climb the totem pole isn't to like force your way through advantages. It's to force your way through relationships. And so I decided at that point, like idol bad, social game good. And so that's kind of what I did. But also, if I'd gotten any sort of confirmation on what was going to happen at tribal council, you know, when I walked up to the thing and you could see me like turning around, like, anybody got any info? And they all just like stare at me. And I was like, well, okay, that flopped. And I just like played it on myself. But if someone had told me something, I actually think in the heat of the moment, just because I didn't really have time to think, I probably would have just like done what they said, but nobody said anything. So I didn't do anything.
Yeah. Kristen was just thinking and thinking.
That felt like 20 minutes in. It felt like 20 minutes in real time. But
did you feel like maybe saying anything to Julia in that moment?
Like after, or
No,
what
like
do you
just
mean?
like while she was standing there, did you feel like, I felt like there was this tension because I think it was an unaired clip where Stan basically tells Julia he should play it on that she should play it on him, and it didn't make any sense, and that's why I didn't put it in the episode. But did you feel like maybe you should say something in that moment, or do you think anyone else should have said something to her in that moment?
I think by me like trying to walk up and trying to figure out, okay, does anyone have any information? Julia was one person in my head where I'm like, okay, you know, if she gives me information, maybe I'll go with it. And I think when she didn't give me anything and she let me waste the idol on myself, which is what I realized had happened like directly after I played it, I was like, well, I'm not going to give her anything either, which is like kind of petty. So the reason I didn't work with her is because I just thought in my head, like, if she wanted to work with me, now would have been the time where she would have said something. I could have said, like, hey, Julia, you want to do something? But if I say something and she doesn't go through with it, something's not going to happen and I'm going to look like the bad guy. And so because she's the one on the offense, if she says something, I'm going to have no choice but to do it. And then we're both going to do it and we're both going to live with our decisions and we'll be in this together. And so I didn't say anything because I didn't think it was my place to say anything in front of everybody, especially because of like how screwed I was. I just didn't want to make my position worse in the event that something didn't pan out how I thought it would.
Stan asks, would you have played it on Robin if I slipped it to you? Assume like the information, the vote. Stan, what is it? But I think in general, Kristen, I think there's a whether or not keeping Robin in is like the best thing. I do think that there is something to be said about like putting friends on the jury and having nothing to do with it. And I think that like people like Andy and Robin, people who you played with closely for a while, being on the jury is not the end of the world.
It wasn't the end of the world, but I was thinking, like, if I'm going to make a move with anybody, I probably need Robin's number, because at that point, I still thought Danny was a threat, and I wasn't close enough to anybody else to have full faith that they would take me into the end. And so, yes, I thought about the benefit. Oh, Robin's on the jury. Maybe they'll vote for me. But I think at the time, I was just more concerned about having, like, very solid allies who actually wanted to protect me, because if I don't like get to the end in the first place, it doesn't really matter how many friends I have. Like, it doesn't matter, because I'm gonna be one of those people too eventually. So it definitely played a role. Okay, if Stan slipped it to me, I don't know if I would have like fully actually believed him the first time he told me Robin's name. He would have had to like really like affirm me and give me a lot of information for me to trust him, because I think people during those conversations were very vague with me. I know it didn't show. It's probably for a reason that it didn't air me talking to anybody, but I just felt like nobody was giving me that much detail. And so even if they did tell me, oh, it's probably you or it's probably this person, I just had no reason to believe them, because, like, why are you telling me this? Like, I feel like I'm being set up here.
Chris, do you also feel like, I think what I felt from watching the season a little bit is that the plan would change so quickly and so rapidly that, like, if you were in the know, you really had to keep your allies in the know. But at the same time, it was so chaotic that like somebody could tell you something and that could be like their plan, but it could be like 5 other people's not at all what they're going to do. I don't know how you feel, Chris.
That was the final 6 vote. I have to say that was truly the most chaotic, messy. Like, I had no idea until I edited that, and I didn't even like touch that footage till maybe like 2 months ago, like, or even looked at it, and I was like, holy crap! It literally was everybody on the chopping block that round except for Danny, who had immunity. Like, literally every name was talked about. Like, Brienne really wanted Stan to go, but it had zero traction, and she brought it up to you, and you seemed okay with it. Annie's name was like kind of let out of left field because it really was on you for a long period of time, and then Danny was the one. This is where I guess Danny would disagree with Naomi, and that he is a good ally, because he put his foot down, and he put his foot down super hard and was like, I am not doing Kristen. We need to do someone else. Let's do Annie now. We can do Kristen next, even though he knew he wasn't going to do that. So that final 6 vote was just so chaotic.
But again, Danny, what happens? Kristen votes the wrong way.
Okay, yeah, that is true. Actually, you know what? He said
I'm not. I don't mean that Danny is like, because Danny is considerate, but Danny is driving the car at all times and won't even like pull over for a rest stop for Kristen. You know what I mean? Like, he's just, we're driving, like no stops. Here we go. Full. Anyways, back to that final 6 vote.
Oh, did we just skip over a bunch? No, never mind. It doesn't.
Well, we just kind of skipped over like the Julia and Veronica
that makes
rounds,
sense.
but
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on those rounds, but I felt like those were like 2 of your like more safer.
You remember when Sharif was panicking and it's like Kristen knew, because I had a conversation with Sharif right after Robin left, because I was desperate and I was like fighting for table scraps. And I didn't know what the plan was, but I was like, oh yeah, Julia told me the plan, but I didn't do it because I wanted to work with you, Sharif. I wanted to work with you, and that's why I didn't do it. And then you see Sharif like with the panic face walk over to Danny's like, but she told Kristen, what was she up to? And stuff like that. And I don't know if that had any weight, but maybe it did. Maybe that's why. Maybe that was like the nail in the coffin to something that was already going to happen. But that was a fun little tidbit. But I was lying when I said that. I don't know if you guys saw that footage and were like, I'm confused. But yeah, I was lying.
I do want to ask, do you feel like you were just content with Julia leaving in that round? Because I feel like you two didn't really have a great relationship, but like if you wanted to maybe like flip it, you might have had some pull in that direction. Or did you just want to do with what Danny had wanted with the
Well,
idol
it's not
nullifier?
even, I don't want to say that like, oh, it was all Danny's idea, but in my head, my best move that round was to be in the numbers at least once so that I can like establish my social footing. I can sort of like lay low in the grass. I can breathe for a few rounds and then I can like do something. And so I was like perfectly fine with it because frankly, my merge up to that point was like dog crap. Like nothing good was happening to me. And so I just knew if I like took this one opportunity to try to do something, like with my luck so far, it's probably not going to work. Like I just thought it wasn't going to work, and so I just wanted to establish my bearings during those few rounds.
That's fair. I feel like the Veronica vote is kind of like self-explanatory. It just kind of narrowed down between
I didn't know she
Veronica
wanted
and
to get
Annie,
Louise out because she
and
had
you.
like seemed so like for Sharif, and so I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to make a move with Veronica, so I have to make my move at final six. If I had known that she was like peeved at Sharif and Brienne, maybe I would have said something. But up to that point, it seemed like she was very in their pocket, so I didn't even want to risk it, and that's something I kind of
Yeah,
regret.
and
But maybe it was the
you
right
said she
move.
was a big threat too. You
That
thought
too,
she was
that
like a
did
big
work.
threat. And I felt like that was a big moment for you too in a way because I felt like you voiced your opinion about really pushing Veronica versus Annie. And Annie was somebody that really did want to work with you for sure. And we
Yeah.
saw that in the final six vote. She even seemed hesitant toward Danny about like wanting to vote, for you. But we ultimately see her vote for Sharif, and she did seem very blindsided in that moment, and I feel like she was because I don't think anyone expected Stan to even vote for Annie in that moment. Um, so I guess what were your thoughts on that vote? We kind of seen your confessionals on it, but like looking back on it, what were your thoughts? Or
I
are your
re- I remember at the time when it was like Annie, 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 and then Annie left. I remember I was the most confused I'd ever been in my life because I'm like looking around like, wait, everybody knew this but me, and everybody was like acting normal, like do, like going back to camp, and I'm just like what just happened here? Because in my mind, I didn't necessarily expect Danny to vote with me because he was going to listen to me. I expected him to vote with me based off of logic. Like, if he's a logical player, if we pick off Sharif, Brienne, Stan, like back to back, one of us is probably going to win the season. And I thought he would have seen that. But when when I learned that he was like so insistent that Annie was going home, I think I was just in a bit of shock because I had learned that I just like morphed this reality of what I thought was going to happen, and I was so sure of it. And it just feels weird when your reality is like yanked from under your rug. But also, I think it helped me in the sense that I got confirmation that a 3-person alliance is in the game and I'm not in it, and it's the final 5. And I think if I think if I'd like beat more around the bush about my intentions those rounds, I wouldn't have gotten that information. But I think because I was so open about my intentions, that might have actually contributed to Sharif being open about his intentions. And what I needed was information, because if I'm going to get through this, I need to actually know what's happening so that I can like do the right thing. And so I think
I also think one of the cutest moments is you telling Annie like they've been on the right side of every single vote, and then like Annie's realization like that they have, and it was like this big moment. Like it's like one of those. I feel like I'm always disappointed in Survivor where my favorites always lose, but it was like this realization like my two favorite players at that moment, are like coming together, finding out all this information, making this big plan, and then it falls through and Annie gets voted out.
I was sad. I wanted to work with Annie, but I think I realized that she felt similar ways to what I feel. And I think part of it was like an emotional thing. Like, I'd rather work with people I connect with. But also, if I can't work with people I connect with, I'll do that too. But obviously, it's better to work with people you connect with. And I think I was probably more aware of like how Annie actually is than other people were, and I think I had felt that it was the same for me. Like I didn't think people perceived me in a very fair way either. Like I won 2 challenges, I found advantages, I've done all this stuff, so why am I still like being shushed in these alliance talks? Like it didn't make sense to me. And I think it's really cool to be able to bond with someone over a shared pain in Survivor, because those are like the most powerful connections, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's kind of weird.
I
It's
would have loved to see you
traumatizing.
both at the final tribal together. That would have been really cool to see you both plead your
Yeah.
cases.
I have to say, the final 6, just so we can talk about it a little bit, because, you know, we've been holding on to this for so long. I was shocked Annie went home. I remember that was the vote where I kind of knew nothing about what was happening. I was fucking shocked. And that's because in my head, Annie was playing. Annie was not riding anybody's coattails, but Annie was perceived as on the bottom. And I thought that at the final 6, the last thing that they were going to do was vote out the person who was perceived to be on the bottom or doing the least or whatever.
That's what I thought.
I was like, there's no way they're going to vote out Annie. And then she went home and I was like, what the fuck just happened? And what game are we playing here? Especially considering that it was, as you point out, it's 3 women, it's 3 men, it's 2-2-2. Like it is all of these like division lines, parallels between groups. It's a man and a woman from every tribe. And the fact that it was like not these incredibly tight duos being challenged of Brienne and Sharif and you and Danny, I was so shocked.
Yeah. I was
But
shocked
also,
too.
I think in a way it's kind of a genius move from Stan to go to the end with 2 pairs, because then those pairs want to work with you very badly.
Yeah.
But wow,
I think it was a good move for
mind.
Stan, but it's not even Stan that I'm like, oh, like he did this amazing thing. I just think Danny was stupid, because I even say it in the episode. Even if Danny votes with us, do we really think Stan's gonna ruin his perfect game and his perfect voting record by going to Rocks? Like, do we really think Stan's gonna go to Rocks? Like, I didn't think he was gonna go to Rocks, but only because at that point, I perceived him as a very self-preservation type of player. And so I don't even think we needed Stan, but I think the fact that he didn't even try to save Annie in the first place probably influenced Danny to vote with him too, because Danny was obviously the person who wanted Annie out the most. And so we didn't even need Stan, but that's okay.
So, Chris, are you saying that Danny, because obviously like right after the Annie vote, like you confront Danny, he says he thought he told you. Did Danny even mention that? Like, did anyone even mention Annie's name to you at all?
Yeah, but the final, like, because we had like one like brief like final conversation, and I'm like, Sharif, right? And he's like, yeah, but I just think he didn't hear me, and he was just nodding for like the sake of it or something.
Like the classic, like, yeah,
I just don't think he heard. No, that's what I think happened, and I think part of it was because it was supposed to be silent time, and I was not being very silent. But I'm sorry about that. But that's the only thing I did. But I definitely, I never thought it would actually be Annie, because in my head it just never made sense for it to actually be Annie, and so I just had too much faith that it wouldn't be Annie, because like I said, I'm like a very logical player. The way I like to play is I like to like take myself out of the game and be like, okay, if I was watching this and I'm screaming at Kristen from my TV, do this, like that's what I'm gonna do. And I didn't know that other people didn't play that way. I didn't realize that Danny was gonna keep Sharif and Brienne, like thinking that they were actually gonna take him to the end. I thought it was obvious that we don't know what, or at least at the time, we don't know what Sharif and Brienne are going to do, because they've been very inconsistent, like with their decisions all season. Like they've said one thing and then they've done another. So how can we ever believe them? So I just didn't think that Danny would want to believe them at this point. So
yeah,
that's okay.
Okay, so I just kind of want like Christian to do a general chit chat for a second of like the arc, because in approaching this sort of final 5 and final 4, because I really see how skilled and adept you are at Survivor in this final 5 moment, but I think it's been building this whole time. Your relationship with Stan, your relationship with Danny, and seeing Sharif and recognizing Sharif for the big target that he is. And I think it really is in a lot of ways like this. The wave is like crashing down, and it's what it's been building up to. How was it to watch it back?
Because at like from my perspective at that point, it seemed like every round that passed by, I was like grasping at straws, but I was never giving up. And so when I knew I was in danger, like I knew for a fact, that's when like kind of the claws came out, and I'd been fighting the whole time. So at the time, I was like, this is just a continuation of that fight. But then watching back, I was like, wow, you really did something, or like me, like I really did something because I was patient with myself. I was patient with my timing. I allowed things to bloom. I didn't like take the axe and just throw it around carelessly. I actually like established like relationships. I was patient. I used my underdog position to sort of like get a pulse on the game, and to see it all like come together like that. I don't think at the time of playing I quite realized like how impactful my gameplay was, because for me it was just like instinct. It was just fighting. I was just trying to get by. And so watching that, I think it made me like myself a little bit more, or like my gameplay a little bit more, and it was a confidence booster, because at that point nothing had really gone my way, but it kind of came my way when it mattered, and it came my way when I fought the hardest. And every conversation I had, the final 5, like when I was like, Stan, I want this for your game, like I always made it about him, and that was very, very intentional. And also, like my philosophy with Survivor, and I say this all the time, is if it doesn't make sense to logically vote you out and emotionally vote you out, like someone's not going to do it. And so I tried to pull like the logic and emotion card with Stan, and it's like I guess it was really cool to see that like all these like theories I had in my head about, okay, how are you actually supposed to pitch when you're in trouble? Because I think people tend to have like a self-centered pitch when they're in danger, like, oh, you should save me because I'm gonna like do this, and it's not good for your game, and you should save me, and everybody always makes it about them. And so watching and like seeing like why everything was effective, I think it just tied everything together for me and really made me happy with the game I played.
You did a great job explaining that. I feel like
Yeah.
it was a really great round to like edit, because there was just so many interesting factors I feel like that came into it. Like your emotional, plea to Stan, I think was like the final deal breaker. But I do want to say the conversation between Sharif and Stan, Sharif kind of did himself in,
Yeah.
which kind of like, kind of made Stan realize maybe I should look at what's the next option. What is Kristen going to offer me? Like, is she willing to go to the final 3 with me? And when you confirm that, that's when it's solidified, I think, for sure. If Sharif had just lied to Stan, saying no matter what, he's going to vote with him, I'll vote Brian out next, I think it could have went a different way, potentially. But I do give your speech one of the best, like, I want to credit that it's one of the best speeches of the game and one of the best pitches. So at Tribal Council,
sorry.
let's get to the Tribal Council. I love that fight. Like you were just like on point the entire Tribal Council. Like all your words, everything you said toward Sharif and Brienne and Danny as well was awesome. I felt like Sharif kind of stumbled a little bit. I think he was a little shocked by some of the things you guys were saying at him. And like like you talking about the Big Boys Alliance and then this and that. So how was that fight at Tribal Council for you?
How was the fight? Here, give me a second to think about this. Because I'm like trying to remember, I'm trying to put myself in the moment. So when I was going into the Tribal Council, I could tell by Stan's eyes that maybe he was going to keep me, but I'm always under the impression that you should never stop fighting, even if you're at the very top of your alliance, if you're at the very bottom, if you're somewhere in the middle, you should never stop fighting, because people can change their mind. And I think what I did at that tribal council, it stemmed from something that happened to me in Reelfoot. So the round I left was actually the final 5. And before tribal council, I was staying 3-2. And I didn't fight hard enough in that tribal council. And the other person who was in trouble did. And then I went home. And so I knew like anything can change, even at tribal council. I can't just assume that this vote is locked in because maybe Sharif changed his mind. And so I wanted to lay everything out on the line for Stan there, not only to like put like more pressure on him to like see like this is actually your best move, but I also wanted the jury to see that I was perceptive of the game Sharif was playing, and that if Sharif goes, I'm the one who spearheaded it because I'm the one who was first able to realize his potential in the game and what he had actually done. Now, did I get credit for that move from the jury? Debatable, but I thought that the way I was vocalizing what he did at that tribal would have helped me more than it did. I thought it would have, but I think it probably just solidified even more that Stan was going to vote for me because I think there's just no reason to vote me out at that point, given the arguments.
Yeah, I also think Sam points out Sharif spilled a little bit during the tribal after so many rounds in control. I think you're so right, Christian, about it's important to consistently fight because it's always kind of like the last thing that's said that sticks in your mind. Yeah. And when you're in a position of power and making a decision, you're really looking to hear the points that you want to hear. And if you're the person who is in danger, you want to reiterate those points. I also think just in general, this is maybe like a Survivor hot take a little bit, but I think it's totally valid for 2 people, 3 people to play a hand in voting somebody out and have it be their move. Like Sharif going home can be your move and Stan's move. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think Survivor has really come down to like, oh, did you have like a Ross and Rob control of the game? Which I think is really impossible for a lot of people to possess.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people can have control with other allies in the game, or you can be fighting to vote out Sharif in one instance versus Brienne, or vote it out like versus voting out Stan. You picked Sharif and correctly identified him as the biggest threat, and Stan correctly like responded to your pitch and said, "You're right. Let's take him out." Anyways, I just think I hate that. It was a big thing on Australian Survivor recently. It kind of drives me nuts. A lot of people can have the same idea at the same time. It's okay.
That's so true. That's what you see at a lot of Australian Survivor at the final 4. There's like a 2-1-1 vote. That's happened so many times, and it's never happened in American Survivor.
Interesting.
I have a dying question here, Kristen.
Okay.
Let's say you or Danny win the final 4 immunity, and Brienne is willing to vote for Stan. Stan's voting for Brienne. Do you take the shot at Stan at that moment?
No, because at that point I thought, I know people were like, well, you and Danny might be seen as like similar, but I thought me and Brienne might be seen as similar because we both have this arc of overcoming like obstacles with our idols. We both have this obstacle of like overcoming the perception of our male counterpart being like the bigger voice than us. Whereas I thought Danny and Stan might be perceived more similarly, and I'm the only one who has even like a remotely similar story to me in the final 3 if I take Stan and Danny there. But also, I did think that Brienne was a big jury threat because not only was Sharif there, but I actually thought in terms of agency, in terms of being in the loop of the most votes, that Brienne was on paper superior to Stan. And so with her being so similar to me and her being perceived as, or me perceiving her as a big threat, it made sense for me to vote her out because my pitch wouldn't have made as much sense if I was sitting there with Brienne because she could have claimed the same thing and she could have claimed control. And so I just wanted to attack the tribal council from like a more unique perspective as opposed to just like going with like a snap judgment of people's perceptions. Oh, Stan's a big guy, I'm going to vote him out. But maybe I should have voted him out, but I still affirm that voting Brienne out was the best move because I do think she actually probably was the biggest threat to win at that point. But you guys know more than me about that, so.
Well, I was just crunching the numbers, aka looking at the voting chart. And Stan votes incorrectly twice in the post-merge. Stan never goes to a tribal council in the pre-merge.
Yeah.
Brienne votes correctly every single time up until voting for you at the final 5.
Mhm.
I think that Brienne has both Sharif and Edsel on the jury, two people who saw her game almost in entirety, I would say, and knew who she was and what she overcame. I think that somebody like Brienne, it's funny. I think Brienne's audience response is mixed. I think some people think that she was robbed and other people think that she played a terrible game, which is so funny. But I think you're right. Brienne was in the mix of a lot of conversations. She was always there, and I do think she had a lot of good ideas, even if we sort of heard them through Sharif more than we heard them through Brienne. Chris, what do you think?
What do I think about Brienne's game?
Yeah, do you think Brienne would have maybe won if she was in the final 3?
I'm convinced.
That's what I'm trying to crunch the numbers. It's so hard to say, to be honest, because thinking in that moment, I do think a lot of people, I do think Stan still may have won against Brienne. I'm trying to figure out a way that Chris could win. What was that?
I said I thought I had heard differently because I know Jeremy was apparently 100% voting Brienne. I know
That's one I
and
think
then
for
Jeremy
sure. Yeah.
and because I talked to Jeremy mostly about like what the jury was saying because he was there most of the time. And I think Brienne would have won over Stan based on what he said. And I think Brienne would have won over me based on what he said. So I think I made the right choice. I think my issue lies in final tribal council where I should have been a little more cutthroat because I might have earned that one more vote if I had said a few things differently. But you never know.
So
Well,
I just want to ask about if you would get voted out at the final 5, can you rank the final 4 like how you would have voted as a juror?
I think between Sharif and Brienne, I would have had to hear their speeches because I don't think it would have been fair for me to automatically be like, I'm voting Sharif and like disregarding the girl because I wouldn't have want the same thing done to me if like I was in that position. So I think Sharif and Brienne are 1 and 2, but I would have had to hear their speeches. And then after that, as much as I love Danny, I think he would have been last just because I wanted the player who won to be someone who made the best decisions, someone who, no matter if they're on the bottom, if they're at the top, if they're in the middle, I wanted them to be a good decision maker and somebody who was very self-aware. And I think Stan would have edged Danny out in my mind because of that. But you never know. I don't know how their speeches would have differed if the final 3 was different. I don't know. But I would say, yeah, Blue on top and then Stan, then Danny.
Another question I had for you, Kristen, is I think that this was a very difficult final tribal council, but also everyone has had a lot of praise for all 3 finalists, which I love, and I love everybody who comments on YouTube so much. They're my best friends. But I think they're right. And a lot of people were saying that this was a fantastic final 3, that all the speeches delivered. And so were you preparing at all for the final 3? Like what were you running the things in your head? How were you sort of getting prepped to deliver an absolute slammer of a final tribal council speech?
So I think before final tribal council, I was really distressed actually because there was just so much happening in my game specifically. We didn't really have time to between rounds to decompress. So I was emotional, but you all, and I want to say thank you for this. You all give like that 20-minute period before final tribal where we get to like vent our thoughts and like say what we're going to say. And I think it was through talking to whoever was filming me that I stopped looking at my game in such a negative light. And then I realized like, oh, like you got through this because you were smart, or you got through this because you were adaptable and you never let things get to you, and you always push forward with like your intellectual game or whatever. And I think it was through talking during that period that I had realized what I had done. And I think when I got to final tribal council, I just kind of let my mouth flow. I think speaking I guess it's something that comes naturally to me, but also I think if I think too much, I would have tripped myself up. So I don't really know if I prepared my speech much aside from that decompressing period you gave before Final Tribal Council. But I think reflecting on the game, I think if I had a little more time, I could have said even more. But I think reflecting on the game at the very end is how I was able to sort of get everything together.
I think a lot of people really loved your speech, a lot of your answers as well. Like the dolphin, for sure, people thought that was good.
It was the best answer. Everybody else's was kind of corny.
Well, yeah, like that is like the lion. Like, okay.
I think okay. I gotta say, I don't want to be mean. I think I turned to like whoever I was standing next to. I think it was Jordan or somebody else, and I just went, "He's gonna say lion," and he did.
I think I remember hearing you say that. But I also love I'm a unique cookie because you're not like a cookie cutter like player, which I thought that was.
I just wing that. I feel like the shit just comes out of my
so
mouth.
Impressed.
And I'm like,
I was like,
I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with it.
When we're deciding the episode titles, I asked like Naomi and Alex to like give me ideas, and I remember Naomi's notes was like, "Oh my god, Kristen is just so fucking quotable." Like there was just like. We literally could have probably put you as the episode title for probably like
every episode,
7 episodes, 8, 9. Like it was just like, okay, we got to be fair. Like we've given her 2, okay, 2 or 3. I think we gave.
Wait,
I think you had 2 or 3 in total. But then the last one that really I think is the best is that you were saying like you were the farmer planting the seeds. Like that was just like that was like chef's kiss. Like that's what people should be looking for. Like using those types of analogies at the Final Tribal Council to impress people. And I think that you really did win over a lot of people's jury votes. And if like second votes,
any of them.
if second votes matter, I think you would have been on everybody's like second vote if they weren't your like the first vote. If you know what I'm trying to say, like I think you did not finish. You did not finish in third in any regard in anybody's mind in terms of their jury vote.
Also, if it tied, I'm convinced that both people take me to the end over each other. So I thought I would have won even if it tied, because I don't know. I thought I was in a good spot at the final 3, but you never know. I think that might be a wrong read. But
let me just read some Kristen quotes real fast.
Oh no.
These are all
email.
These are all like finale pitches, like title pitches. I know you're not looking me in the eyes right now. These people aren't good liars. Maybe you should have believed me. I think I'm gonna pay for that. You did not have logic in your brain. Like these are all like banger. Like
if I'm heated, I'm like the thing about me is if I'm like nice, I'm like kind of boring. But if I'm like heated, I'm very not boring. I think if people inspire anger out of me, I just talk and things come out. And sometimes they sound good and sometimes they don't. But when they sound good, they sound really good. So
they definitely did. One of the most quotable people to ever play the game.
That's so nice of you.
Also, the tiny little moment that I love so much from you, Kristen, is when it's so the vote reveal is great, of course. Chris, don't we have someone who's like really good at ordering votes who kind of makes this moment happen? I don't know, whatever his name is. But there's this moment where I think it's either like when the second or third vote is read for you and you realize that like, oh, this is not just like a 1-1-7 or whatever it is. Like, oh, this is close, but also it's a great moment where like, I can see it on your face that you're like looking at Danny and you're like, I think I beat you, but you're looking at Seth and you're like, I think it's between us. And I would highly suggest everybody watches the finale again and watches the votes being read because you go on such a journey. It's hilarious.
I think you can see everything. I think you can see everything in my face. I don't know. Are any of you astrology people? No? Yes?
Not a little bit. I mean, I'm a Virgo.
So do you know
we got the astrology queens in the chat somewhere?
Like the sun, moon, and rising. So I'm a Libra sun, Leo moon, Leo rising. And when you have like the moon and the rising, the same thing, you can read the person's face basically. And so I think that's a very accurate description of me is you can read what I'm feeling, but you can't read what I'm thinking. And I think that's like sort of my biggest strength, but also my biggest weakness in games is you can see what I'm feeling, but not what I'm thinking. And I think people mistake the two often.
That's so interesting. My next question is, so after all the jury speeches, were there any votes that you felt like I definitely have them or I definitely don't have them?
I think I knew I had Jeremy's, and I could just tell by eye contact during the final tribal questioning. And there's one point where I look over, like during the final tribal, and he's like nodding at me, and then he like gave me a wink. I'm like, oh, I guess he's voting for me. Like, I don't think he would wink if he wasn't voting for me, right? But that was it. So I think when you saw that I was shocked after the second vote, it was because I wasn't expecting a second vote. And then when it was the third one, I was like, wait, my speech actually worked. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to win. And then it was like, Stan. I was like, oh, okay. And I wasn't upset about that until like probably like the next day. I think at the time I was like genuinely happy. And then I was like, wait, that could have been me. And then I got a little sad.
Let's go over your votes then. I mean, Jeremy, you kind of knew.
Yeah.
The next one, I think, which was a great vote and a very big compliment, is Brienne did vote for you. I do think it was a little bit because you had said that she deserved a jury seat at the final three. And then the last one
is Julia.
Julia. That was a big surprise, I think. What did you think about Julia and Brienne voting for you?
I think Brienne, I understood because I think I figured it was because I acknowledged her game. And I thought, oh, maybe she thinks I'm smart because I'm acknowledging her game. Because I think the other two people in the final three didn't really acknowledge her as a force. And I know if that was me, I would want to be acknowledged. And so I kind of like, when I knew that it was Brienne who did it, it kind of made sense. Julia did shock me because I didn't have a close game relationship with her. But then when I heard that it was Julia, and I was thinking, oh, maybe why could it have been Julia? I think everything made sense because I remember when Julia left the game, I think I had kind of realized, oh, this was like Stan's fault, and he's not really taking responsibility for that. And I think I figured, oh, maybe it's because he didn't take responsibility for that she just thinks he's like not self-aware. It made sense after I thought about it for a few minutes, but the initial reaction was like surprise, but also I am very grateful for those votes. I just wish I had one more.
Another thing is we see the two big boys that are not in the final tribal council both vote for Danny, and neither of them vote for Stan. Yeah. Were you surprised at all?
By Andy's vote? No. By Sharif's vote, I didn't know how Sharif was going to vote. I thought he could have voted any of the three. I think I was a little surprised that Sharif voted Danny because I thought, oh, maybe he will vote for me because maybe he's going to acknowledge that I actually was the one to spearhead him. And anytime like I've been spearheaded before, I always give like mad respect to the person who sort of vocalizes it first. And I think I was a little bit shocked by Sharif's. I wasn't shocked by Andy's because I didn't really have the closest relationship with him. And I guess Stan didn't either. But I think most of the votes kind of make sense. Except the people who I didn't vote out, who apparently voted like partially off of loyalty, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, Stan's 4 votes. You know, it's so funny. I remember filming it. You know, at the time I wasn't surprised. I didn't look at the footage for a very long time, and I had confused who voted for Stan to win until I was filming the final tribal council. I was editing it. And I thought for a long time that Sharif and Brienne voted for him. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then I was like, looking, I was like, Robin? Veronica? Annie? Like, this just doesn't make, like, actual sense. Like, Annie, like, you were with Annie.
I thought Annie was going to vote for me because I thought she was going, or actually, I take back the question where, did you expect any votes? I do think I expected Annie's vote because I thought that she would have seen herself in my gameplay with my story and the way I articulated my game. Maybe she would have related to that, but also I was loyal to her. So it's like I had a double whammy of like the relatable card and the loyalty card. So I thought I was gonna get her. And when I asked her after the season, oh, like, what was the reason for your vote? I didn't really care. She was like, oh, like Stan was loyal to me and I think he played good. I'm like, wait, what did you say? Like, you said he's loyal to you? And she's like, did you keep me? And I was like, yeah. I don't think she fully knew that it was me who kept her. And I don't know if that's, I really don't know if that affected her vote. It might have a little bit, but I remember when she said that, I was like, I thought I said at Final Tribal and at the Final Five that I was like the lone Annie vote, but I think maybe also she thought she was actually idled out and more people kept her than she thought. Like, I don't really know. And I think it was partially exhaustion too. Like, maybe she just made an assumption on who was loyal to her or something.
Well, it was freezing at that point, and you guys in particular were really cold, and I think we were really rushing through things. So I wouldn't blame somebody if they kind of like forgot something a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think if I had mentioned it more at Final Tribal Council, like, Annie, you were my girl, like, I was gonna keep you forever. I think if I had like done to her what I did to Brienne, I would have gotten her vote because maybe she would have realized. But that's my own fault. I know if I ever play a game again, target more jurors individually in my speeches. Don't just do a couple and then assume you got this vote and this vote. And so I think that's the only thing I would change.
I mean, I think Robin is the most shocking for me. I mean, Annie is shocking. Even Veronica is like shocking just because there was this like little mini rivalry between the two of them. But you had played the entire game with Robin very closely. And I know Stan and Robin had like a little bit of a pre-game relationship before the game, but it was proven to Robin that Stan did betray them.
I think they didn't know the degree of Stan's betrayal because I was talking to them about the episode they left, and they seemed genuinely shocked that Stan said what they said or what he said. And so I think, the game isn't about reality. It's not about what actually happened in voting the just winner. It's about perception. And if Robin thought that Stan was loyal and a good player and this big threat and a friend outside of this, there's absolutely no reason to not vote Stan. But some of those assumptions weren't based on reality. And that's just part of it. And that's part of it that I accept and that I'm trying to be at peace with.
Yeah, well, there's also like a big part of Survivor that I don't think is talked about enough is kind of like lying to people and continuing to lie. Like, there's no rule in Final Tribal Council that says, okay, now you got to own up to everything. You can, if that's your strategy, but you don't necessarily have to, which can be, of course, quite frustrating sometimes. I mean, to me, I agree with you, Kristen, back to what you said about Sharif. Just to say that, like, I know that when I get voted out of things, which is not often, but when I do, I like to see who it was who had a lot of agency and who was also driving the decision. Sometimes it has to do with me, sometimes it doesn't. But when somebody can say, well, I saw you as the threat that you were, I recognize that about you, and then I voted you out because of it. That's the game, isn't it? Is to see what other threats exist out there and to make sure that they're not with you in the end. It doesn't shock me that Sharif didn't vote for you, but I think that your point stands of like, hey, this is a good reason to vote for me. Of course, every juror is entitled to their own vote. And I'm just very grateful that we did not have a 3-3-3 tie because we had no fucking idea how to fix that. So thank you.
I had some ideas, but I don't think they're that fun, honestly.
Yeah, we maybe effed up a little bit, but it's fine. Who cares?
No, okay. I forgot what I was going to say. You can keep going.
That's okay.
I was going to say something and I forgot.
Any other things you would like to talk about?
Any questions?
I think I asked a lot of questions, but I just want to know what was your favorite moment overall, I guess, from the experience?
This is corny, but probably. Or do you want it to be like during the actual game, or like the whole experience
It could be
from the
either.
beginning? Okay. Well, I'll do both. I'll do both. So my favorite overall was just watching the episodes and being like affirmed. I'm not crazy. Like when I have these ideas of like who a threat is or what a move should be, and it doesn't go through, I think I tend to be like, I tend to be self-analytical in the fact that I'm like, maybe I'm just delusional. Maybe like the thoughts that I'm thinking are crazy. Maybe they don't make sense. Like I try to like be critical of myself in that way. And I think for the last 2 years, I've been like racking my brain, like, oh, how like dumb was I? How crazy was I? Like I'm probably gonna look like I make no sense most of the time. And then I think just watching back, just reaffirming that I wasn't crazy, sort of tied all of the self-esteem issues that previous games had given me, and so that was a very fulfilling thing. But during the season, I think when you're reading the jury votes, and I like thought, like realized, oh, I'm capable of getting jury votes, because I didn't think I was gonna really get that many. I think it just like made me really confident in myself. And I think if anybody in this cast needed it, it's me. And I think part of that's just an age thing. I don't know if like anybody paid attention to this, but I was the youngest person in the cast. Like we definitely all compared ages, and I was the youngest. And most of the people who made the merge were over 30. They were all confident. They all have their shit together. When you're like a young, early 20-something-year-old girl, I think it's very easy to be consumed by your image or how you look or how you're perceived. And I think this experience and being reaffirmed that I do actually have these talents sort of was like the bridge to like the next chapter in my life, which is like being in my mid-20s now and confident and knowing I'm the shit and knowing I'm smart and all of this stuff. And I think I really needed that. So
Oh, we love you, Kristen. You're the
Yeah.
sweetest. How old were you when you played? I'm sorry, I forget
I
how
was
old you
like
were.
I was 22 or 23, but it was the youngest in
Okay.
the cast. I think Talk was tied with me, but he was second boot. So
Well, Kristen, can I tell you, when Emily Paddock had played season 4, it was very obvious she was the youngest in the cast. But I also kind of knew that about her. Whatever. Until you I think you texted it to me a couple of days ago, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Is that true? And then I looked it up and I was like, wait, that's true.
yeah.
Blew my mind. It didn't even for a second occur to me that you were the youngest person there.
That
Which
was
I think
part of
just
my
says
emotional nature. Yeah.
it just said so much to me that it never felt like you were the odd duck out for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I also do love that this is a cast of people who are some people are 30 plus, and we get to see a lot in season 6. I also love that we get to do a little bit more age diversity, which I think is important to live games, because we know how typical it is to just be like a bunch of 20-year-old dudes who love the outdoors.
Oh God.
But that's something. It's so funny that you would mention that, because it had never crossed my mind. I know for sure while we were playing the game, and also in all of the years since.
Yeah, I don't think I realized that until I was thinking about okay, maybe it's not a size gender thing that people aren't taking me seriously. Could it be something else? And I was trying to think. I'm oh, maybe it's an age thing. Maybe I just don't know how to communicate my thoughts to groups as effectively, because I've only been in the job force for a few months at that point. Everybody else is used to staff meetings. They're used to I don't fucking know. Maybe that's part of it. So
Honestly, I would love to see you play a game again, maybe in 5-6 years, and it get filmed, just to kind of see how much you could change. I'm just curious also, do you feel like you want to play again? You were talking about your mental health, your self-esteem.
Someday. I feel I'll play again someday. I want it to be when I'm at the prime of my life. And I think at this point in my life, I'm building my way up there, but I still got a couple more things I want to learn before I play again. But I'll play again. It's just a matter of when. We'll see.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it a little bit. I'd love to do a big you and I talk Big Brother games. I feel like Survivor is Survivor, and we love Survivor. But there's something about testing yourself in a different capacity that is always interesting.
I know I'm gonna get 5th or 4th in Big Brother, because I've done a few orgs, and I always get 5th or 4th because I can't win those in-game comps. But maybe now I can. I weightlift a lot. I do puzzles. Maybe I could.
Don't doubt yourself. You have to be confident,
Yeah.
Kristen. You can do anything.
Is it easier or harder to remember what happened on hour 12 of this game?
God,
Because
that's
there's
I
horrible.
guarantee you half of the things I say probably didn't actually play out how I am saying they are. It's revisionist history probably took a role in that, but I try my best not to do that. But
Are you playing a Big Brother game? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
No, well, I want to.
Oh, you want to? Okay.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Okay.
What game are you? Are you trying to pre-game, Chris? What are you doing?
I'm
What
not
game are
playing
you
anything.
talking about? Okay.
I don't know what Chris is talking about. I don't.
Big Brother
him.
Buffaloes.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, okay. I was thinking.
I'm not a New Yorker. I don't have
Anyhow.
New Yorker friends like you guys.
Yeah,
have people
you
from
live in
this state.
Seattle now, right? You live over in Washington.
I live like West Coast. Yeah, it's very far away. Yeah, West Coast, West Coast. I like it better. I like it better, but only because I like nature, and every city there is like surrounded with nature.
So
whereas like in New York, it's like, do you want to go to Central Park? And I'm like, is that really nature? Kind of is, but that's like it.
No, and you can't walk your children through it, really.
I was thinking the same thing, Chris.
Oh, one time I went to Central Park, I saw this woman like beating her child because the child was like running away like without her permission, and I was like, this place is kind of not serene, but that's
and
okay.
Also, I think other great news: you are engaged, right?
Yeah.
To another LRG like legend.
Shut the front door. Wait, where did this get posted? How did I miss this? We're not.
It's not on my. It's on. Other person's, yeah. No, it was after Survivor New York, so
That's what I thought.
I didn't even know you guys were dating, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Two of the best like Survivor BC players of all time.
He is a white boy, so you might not want to cast him, but he's a good player. So
yeah, if he's a white guy who loves nature, I'm sorry, we're full. We're full.
He has he's better. He's more joking. Yeah.
That's fantastic, Mazel Tov, Kristen. I mean, I feel like also Survivor New York is a growing experience if you utilize it that way. And I think that everybody on this cast, I would say, has utilized it in some way, which I really love to see. People changing their lives in lots of different directions. And I really am grateful that you participated in this experience and took the risk, because the risk is very, very scary, to the point where I still haven't taken the risk again, and I'm glad that you did.
If there's anybody in this world who had like confidence issues, it's me. So if you're sitting on your couch, like, I have confidence issues, I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm like the walking example of someone who had confidence issues and I did good. Like, just because you're not confident doesn't mean you're not actually a boss ass bitch. So everybody who is hesitating, do it, apply. Because even if you like don't do like good by textbook definition, you're going to make friends who are going to make you feel good about yourself. And I think one thing that's cool is even like the first boot, like they get celebrated. I feel like every player, regardless of how they did, was celebrated for what they did. And I think if you're looking for a confidence boost, these are the perfect people to talk you up. So
yeah,
we're looking for 18 to 20 new friends.
Maybe we could be on our next podcast in like 3 years, but it'll be fun. Kristen, anything else you want to say to anybody? I know you just said that, but
honestly, I kind of blacked out. I didn't actually black out for the half of my podcast, so there's probably like a million things that I would say, but I'd probably be repeating myself, so I think I'm okay.
Okay, this was so much fun. Kristen, thank you again for doing the game itself.
I hope I made sense. Sometimes I ramble.
No, you did. You were great. You have a great memory.
All right. For anybody who has reached this point, let's talk about what's coming down the pipeline. Eventually, a Veronica exit interview. Veronica is a very responsible person who goes to bed before Chris and I, so we're working on it. Annie, Sunday the 9th at 9 p.m. Annie exit interview. Monday the 10th, 8 p.m. exit interview with Brienne, and Davey will be joining me for that one. The 11th, Danny interview at 9 p.m. Then skip to the 17th. We will do a Sharif podcast at 9 p.m. Very exciting. And then we will have Stan after the 17th. So everybody is ready. Everybody is in the queue. Don't forget to follow Survivor New York on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, where we will post announcements about casting season 7 as well as these podcasts. So if you are interested, tinyurl.com/SNY7 app will take you to the new application. And I'm so excited. We have, frankly, some psychotic people filled it out within like the first hours of it being up, and I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah,
I love the commitment. But
I'm already overwhelmed.
Yes. Thank you, Kristen, once again. And thank you for
Yes,
everybody,
we love
Valencia,
you.
the Legends, everybody, Silent Podcast for
Bye,
having us. And
Valencia.
good night.